whilst the last few people are being admitted, just to let everybody know, if there's anybody that's came to this session specifically to speak to Catherine, unfortunately, she hasn't been able to attend because she's had an emergency. However, I'm sure you'll all agree that we've got 6 other great panelists, so hopefully you can all learn a great deal. I don't know how many of you attended the session last week, but if you can write your questions in the chat box, which you will find at the bottom of your screen throughout, and then the panelists will answer those questions at the end. If you want to direct the question to a specific panelist, then feel free to do so in the chat box. But otherwise, we'll just sort of delegate the questions around to try and get as many questions answered as possible. It seems that everybody is in. If you do keep all of your mics on mute, that would be great. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of sound. I'm conscious that it would be great if we could get cracking so we can learn as much as possible. So Ryan, did you want to start?
Sure, yeah, no problem. So I'm Ryan. Hello, everyone. I'm a future pupil barrister at St Philip's Chambers in Birmingham. In terms of my route to the bar, it's probably a little bit different to the standard route. I actually went into a different career path after I did a law degree at Newcastle University. So I went into recruitment for 2 to 3 years, decided it wasn't for me, wanted to do something in the law, so I did a master's degree at the University of Birmingham. I got a job after that as a paralegal at Shoesmiths, and I was there for a couple of years. I then got a scholarship from the Inner Temple, so I went to do the bar course, and then during the bar course, I got pupillage at St Philip's. I'd applied the year prior to doing the bar course as well, but I was unsuccessful that year. So that's where I'm at the moment. Is there anything else, Paige, at all, or is that kind of just what you want for now, just like an intro?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's up to you if you want to do it now or later, but if you wanted to go on sort of your tips for gaining pupillage or the steps that you took that you think sort of enhance your chances.
Sure, no problem. I think the main thing that helped me was building up a good network of people in the same industry that could assist you with work experience and opportunities to get yourself out there and get yourself known in the area that you eventually want to practice. So I was pretty sure that I wanted to do crime from the start. So I made sure that the mini pupillages that I obtained were directed towards that path. And what I mean by that is that I got a mini pupillage at number 5 Barrister Chambers first through the University of Birmingham, and they asked what areas you like to do. I already knew what to do crime, so I got put with a criminal barrister for 3 out of the 5 days I was there. During that time, I was seeing a GBH trial, I think it was, and that was going to go on for 3 or 4 weeks. So I just asked the barrister during my placement if I could come back after my mini pup rest of the trial, and he was more than open to it. I got his business card, I followed up with him, and I managed to get another 2 weeks worth of experience by doing that, by seeing the rest of the trial. So I could actually talk about in my interviews a full trial that I'd seen and why I wanted to do criminal law and what interested me from that specific set of facts that I saw. On the back of that, I met a barrister in court that was defending in that case. I got chatting to him over a coffee that the barrister I was with had. I said I was looking for more experience if I could to see more things, and he told me about a case that he was doing, and I asked him if I could join him. So from the back of keeping contact with one barrister from one chambers, I managed to secure a further placement. So that was quite useful. So I'd recommend trying to use your network as best as you can, trying to build those contacts. Even if they can't necessarily afford you some sort of work experience right now, it's still good to know people in the industry because they will know other people. And the way that I found was best to do that was by talking to people, by going to different events, trying to get yourself out there. I know it can be quite difficult because a lot of events people go to at university, there's always more students than there are people to talk to. But if you can get yourself in front of people, it's normally the best way to go. It also gave me the chance to talk to them about their recruitment policies and what they look for in pupillage interviews, what they like on applications, more importantly, what they don't like. You could have a real good discussion and really find the key information that will help you stand out on applications. So that would be one big tip that I'd give, to try and get yourself out there and talking to as many people as you can. Is that all right, Paige?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ryan.
No worries.
Tom, did you want to go next?
I can do, yeah. Hi everyone. So my name is Tom Doyle, and I am starting a common law pupillage with 5 Pump Court Chambers down in London next year. So I'm currently doing the BPTC at BPP Leeds, and we'll be finishing that soon. Who knows when in these current crazy times. So in terms of my story into where I am now, it's a strange one. It's probably why I've managed to get on this panel. So I initially, growing up, wanted to be an actor. Obviously, there's quite the parallel between being an actor and being a barrister. They're both very public speaking centric. Both professions are full of weird and wonderful people. Actually, that's probably as far as the comparisons go. Anyway, I wanted to be an actor, and I left school wanting to do that. My A-levels reflected that, and I didn't get exceptional A-levels at all. I did okay, but I could have done better. I went down the acting path for a bit, applied for various drama schools, did a few professional, some semi-professional gigs here and there, and eventually got to the point where I was very disillusioned with it, thinking, okay, if I keep doing this, I'm probably going to be not unemployed, but out of work for the rest of my life. The reason why I say out of work rather than unemployed is obviously, as a barrister, I'm going to be self-employed and technically not employed. Anyway, I realised that being an actor was not what I wanted it to be, and I was getting a bit fed up. And around that same time, I, by complete chance, got called up for jury duty. I didn't want to go. I was 20, I knew nothing about law, about criminal justice. Obviously, I had no choice but to go, so I did. And it sounds really cliche, but I fell in love with it. I loved what I was watching, two very talented advocates arguing over someone's liberty. I found it enthralling, and I decided to research, okay, what this is a barrister. Okay, what does a barrister do? How do you become a barrister? I think I could be quite good at that. So I did, and I realized you've got to do a law degree. So I decided to have a look on UCAS and see if any law schools would take me in, and happily my actual law school, University of Liverpool, took me on, and I threw caution to the wind and decided to do a career change and start a law degree at 21 years old. And one thing led to another. I found that I enjoyed studying law. I enjoyed being a lawyer. I like to think I was okay at it. And that led to me going to third year, wanted to do the bar course. I was still very certain of the fact I wanted to be a barrister. I will say, right here and right now, I initially tried to get a scholarship with Middle Temple. I got rejected. And I found that very, very difficult to take. I had got myself into this mindset that, okay, I've worked hard during uni, it's all going to be fine. I'm going to get a scholarship that's going to take me onto the bar course. I'm going to get pupillage. It's all going to be great. And that wasn't the case. Obviously, me being here in the position that I'm in now, you don't need to get a scholarship first time around, if at all, to get pupillage. So if any of you guys are either in a position where you're doing the bar course and you haven't got a scholarship, or you haven't got a scholarship and you're due to start the bar course, or you're a bit earlier on and you're worried about what would happen if you don't get one, that's okay. A lot of very talented advocates don't get scholarships. But my approach and my attitude to not getting one was, I want to give it another go. I believe in myself that I'm capable of getting one, so I want to try again. And I did. I took a year out. I didn't go straight to bar school. I paralegaled for a year, and I worked in personal injury. Learned a lot about how lawyers actually operate, how civil procedure works, and learned a lot about drafting as well. Did a lot of particulars of claims, etc. And I decided to reapply for a scholarship, but at Lincoln's Inn instead. My approach was that I believed Lincoln's as an inn would be my best shot at getting one. And in the end, I was successful second time around. I got a Lord Denning Scholarship, which is one of their most prestigious ones, and that allowed me to study the bar course and not have the financial pressure that I do appreciate a lot of people do have. So that was me getting to here. In terms of pupillage, I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can, because I'm mindful I'm droning on a bit. I applied once in the year prior to doing the bar course during my gap year. I sent off 14 applications. I got 6 first round interviews, of which I managed to attend 5. 2 of them were double booked, unfortunately. And out of those 5 interviews, I didn't get a single second round. They all said no to me after that initial phase, and that was okay. Obviously, it's a bruise to my pride, my ego, and rejection sucks. There's no way of getting around that. Rejection's not easy. But I tried again on my bar course year. I sent off 17 applications this time around. Of those, I got invited to 10 of them. Out of those 10, 7 went ahead, 3 didn't due to the current circumstances. And then out of those 7, 4 ended up being final rounds. And of those 4, 1 was that magic one and was the offer of pupillage. So it's a lot of interviews and applications sent off before I got that yes. But what I do want to say is that is not uncommon at all. A lot of very capable advocates will go through 2, 3, 4 years of applications, having rejection after rejection. That's not a reflection on those advocates. It's just a very competitive business, and there's an element of luck to it as well. It's who a given chambers likes on a given day. So I think just to quickly give 2 pieces of advice to anyone going down the route. The first piece of advice that I would give is kind of a holistic one on how I dealt with rejection as I got them. And for me, the way that I tried to deal with it was, rather than focusing on the fact I've been rejected, looking at the fact that I've got this far already to an interview, which in itself is a great achievement. And I've got myself into a situation where my CV is something I couldn't have dreamed of it being several years ago. So rather than looking at the rejection from X, Y, Z chambers, I look at the fact that I wanted to be an actor. I got pretty average A levels, and now I've got a first class degree, a scholarship from my inn, other scholarships from my provider. I'm getting pupillage interviews and looking at those successes and focusing on those. And focusing on those successes, I found, helped me get through the rejections that came. So that would be my first piece of advice. And my second piece of advice is, again, it might seem a bit wishy-washy, but I can't emphasize how important it is, and that is be yourself. There is no such thing as an archetypal barrister. Every single barrister is different. I went into my law degree and even onto my bar course year thinking, all the barristers who I'm going to meet are going to be these, Oxbridge educated, privately educated, posh people who speak a certain way and act a certain way, and that was intimidating. And I got to the point eventually where I realized, wait a minute, that's not true. The bar is full of, as I said earlier, weird and wonderful characters from all different walks of life. So there's nothing wrong in being yourself and being a bit different. But also on that piece of advice, barristers generally are quite smart people, and they're very good at reading people. It's part of the job description. And if you're not yourself and you go into an interview, you're going to be found out. There's no way about it. If you try and be someone that you're clearly not, you'll get found out, and it will not do you any favors. So what I'm trying to say as my second piece of advice is go in and be yourself, and don't be afraid of being yourself in this profession, because this profession is big enough for all these different wonderful personalities. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. Again, if anyone has any questions for me about anything, pupillage, scholarships, being an actor and going to the bar, whatever, then please do fire them my way. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. That's great. Jade, would you like to go next?
Hi, everyone. My name's Jade, and I'm a current pupil at the Crown Prosecution Service, so I'm with the Employees Bar. And I started my pupillage this March. My journey to the bar was kind of much like everyone else's. I grew up in South East London all my life. I went to all state schools. I got 3 C's at my A-levels as well, which was really disheartening for me. So I wasn't able to go to the universities that I planned. So I went to my local university, University of Greenwich, got a 2-1. I stayed and did a master's in international and commercial law, where I luckily got a distinction. I also then started working for a year after that in recruitment as well for a year. And then I made a really last minute decision to go to the bar. So I think I sent my papers off the day before they were actually meant to be due at the Inn of Court, and luckily I got them in. So I was able to go and start the bar 2018, and I finished last year 2019. And I started working as a paralegal with the Crown Prosecution Service, and I got that only in October last year. And I started doing that for about a month before I applied for their pupillage scheme. And I applied for their pupillage scheme, and luckily I was able to get it. So that was actually my first pupillage application. That was the first time I had applied for pupillage ever, and I was really, really happy to have made it through all the hurdles that they had. I think in terms of tips and things, one of the things that helped me was that I knew that I didn't go to a university that had the best facilities in terms of, we didn't have mooting societies, we didn't really have debating societies. They didn't, as much as they had good connections, they weren't with top chambers or top law firms. So I was really battling against a lot. And the things that helped me were just grabbing hold of what I could get. So in terms of that, that was me volunteering at my school, university's legal advice centre. From there, I volunteered at another local advice centre that was close to my house, just like a local high street firm. I volunteered there for a few years, and from there I was able to volunteer at other legal advice centres and just keep that process going. So I didn't necessarily go to any top law firms. I couldn't apply to so many law firms at the time, because when they saw my A-levels and the university that I went to, I wasn't ever successful. So that really did play a big part of me just sticking to what I could get. Other things that I was able to do were things that my university could offer, which were essay competitions, and just doing those and seeing where I could get. Luckily, I was able to get shortlisted, and that really helped in things of my CV. Other things that really helped as well was bar school. So joining my Inn of Court, they were able to give me things like putting me in touch with barristers that were there, and also do formal mooting. So when I joined my Inn, that was actually the first time that I'd ever done mooting before. And I think it was also really, really helpful, because the Inn just gave me a lot of what I couldn't get at my other universities, to be perfectly honest. I did my first mini pupillage only last year, and I did it in a civil background. So I did it at Ely Place Chambers. I was also able to marshal through my Inn, so I was able to sit with the Crown Court judge for a few days, and just watch hearings, and that was utterly helpful. And I echo again that I only really did that last year. And I think working as a paralegal as well was also really helpful, because when you paralegal with the CPS, you're in the Crown Court every single day. So effectively, I was able to make up for all the mini pupillages that I just wasn't able to get through applying myself. And just seeing the court experience firsthand just really secured the fact that I did want to be a barrister, and that it was really, really possible. So I was really, really lucky to have secured that kind of stage in my career. Also, things that I would say is that I know there's a lot of people from different backgrounds and different minority backgrounds that obviously kind of struggle about how they might come to the bar. Things that helped me was that I attended some events from a barrister called Ruth Reed. I think she's from 3 Temple Gardens, and she runs a society what's called Cake and Council. And it's where you go to an event that she runs. There's other barristers who are from minority ethnic backgrounds. They're all judges, pupils, barristers, solicitors. And they basically give talks like this about their backgrounds, what tips they have, how they got to their careers. And you get to mingle with them afterwards for about 45 minutes to an hour and ask them anything that you like. And things like that were really helpful, because I was able to see other people who weren't like me at the bar succeeding so well, having come from different backgrounds. And I think that was just really, really helpful to know that there were people running organizations like that where you can talk to people really, really casually So I think, again, I echo what Tom said. It's just, just take the opportunities that you can get, because you never know what opportunity can lead to another one. The more you talk to people, the more you can get connections, and it's just really important to build connections at this stage. So don't ever be afraid to just talk to someone, find someone on LinkedIn, or go to a legal event if possible, because those things really, really help. So thank you, Paige.
That's great. Thanks, Jade. I just wanted to add on as well, Cake and Council do sort of mock interviews and stuff. I don't know how that will work with the current climate, but once a year that they do offer that, so it might be worth checking it out, as Jade said. Did you want to go next, Sophie? Oh, sorry, Sophie Kenny.
Yeah,
almost.
No problem. Hi everybody, I'm Sophie, currently a second six pupil at 30 Park Place in Cardiff. In terms of my background, you probably notice I've not got a Welsh accent. I was born and grew up in Oldham, northeast Manchester. I think we're famous at the moment for the highest rate of teenage pregnancies. So when I talk about my careers advisor shortly, you'll understand where she was coming from. I actually had a pretty strange path to the bar. I joined the army at 16, completed my A-levels and basic training at their Defence Academy Sixth Form College, and went on to read economics for some ungodly reason at Loughborough University by way of in-service degree. And I worked as a military intelligence officer for 5.5 years. Left the army to pursue a career in law, did the GDL at the University of Law in Manchester and the BPTC at BPP Manchester. I had very fortunate to have double major scholarships from the Inner Temple, without which, quite frankly, I wouldn't have been able to do the GDL, wouldn't have been able to do the BPTC either. I finished the BPTC and went on to be a paralegal in the CAT PI department at DWF in Manchester. I got pupillage whilst I was at DWF. Left there and went on to work as a caseworker at the Health Service Ombudsman, handling complaints that were specifically focused on clinical negligence matters that either had been knocked back for conditional fee agreements by solicitors or were outside the limitation period for bringing a legal action, but the claimant or family member still wanted to bring a complaint about that matter. Currently, as I've said, in my second 6 months of a common law pupillage at 30 Park Place in Cardiff, accepting instructions in crime, civil and family, though my primary interests are in crime and regulatory work and court martial. I think in terms of my top tips and advice for maximising chances, I mean, I'd echo what everybody else has said already, but the main thing, which I think is particularly appropriate given the title of this panel session, and something that one of my mentors told me whilst I was on the bar course, is quite simply not to let anybody else tell you what you can and can't do and what you can and can't achieve. I went to my local comp school, was predicted straight A stars in my GCSEs. Grand. I thought that was well on my way to becoming a barrister. I even had a gifted and talented careers advisor, and in a meeting with her, she asked me what my ideal career would be, what is my career ambition, and I told her that I wanted to be a barrister. That's all I wanted to do. Nothing else would suffice. I wanted to be a barrister. And she sat me down square in the face at 15 years old and told me that wasn't a realistic career ambition for somebody like me. And by somebody like me, she meant somebody from a working class background, somebody that would be the first generation in my family to go to university. All the stuff I'm sure you've heard before, all the non-traditional type backgrounds that you don't expect to see at the bar. I spent a significant proportion of my academic and my professional life being told that people like me couldn't do this job. I wasn't going to get into Oxbridge. I don't speak like the Queen. And I mean, even in the army, I was told that to have soldiers respect me, I'd need to take elocution lessons. So God knows what I was going to do when I got to the bar, if I ever got to the bar. So I think the main tip, and if you take anything away from the session that's from me, is don't let anybody else tell you what you can and can't do. I've seen a question already in the chat about self-belief and how to have more self-belief. And I think sometimes people think, oh, I come from a working class background, that's not something I should be shouting from the rooftops about. And I'm not suggesting that you walk into an interview panel or sit in a waiting room and tell everybody how fantastic it is that you're from a working class background and here you are trying to stick it with the elite. But it's not something to be ashamed of. And I mean, pot calling kettle black, I was the one that went in with a telephone voice and thought, I'm never going to fit in here unless I speak like everybody else. Or you watch Downton Abbey and think you've got to have an accent like that, otherwise you're not going to make it. It is hard. There's no doubt about that. And sometimes it does feel like you've got to work a bit harder. If you didn't go to Oxbridge, if you didn't go to a Russell Group, if you've not got outstanding GCSEs, A-levels, if you've not been to the States and saved 6 people from death row, then you're never going to get that criminal pupillage. It's just not the reality. And there are so many people at the bar that talk like me. Even in Cardiff, my pupil supervisor, I rocked up and my pupil supervisor has got effectively the Oldham equivalent accent for South Wales, and I thought, bloody hell, yeah, I've had this kind of inferiority complex that I couldn't do this job because of the way I speak and where I come from and what jobs my mum and dad do, and it's just not the case. I think I'd echo what Jade, Tom and Ryan have already said about experience as well. Get as much experience as you can. Try and follow up opportunities. If you go on a mini pupillage with one person and they're off out for lunch with their missus in the afternoon because something's gone short and they stick you with somebody else for the afternoon, ask them what they're doing the week after. Ask them if they've got anything boring. If you've never seen Disclosure before, oh God, I remember doing a mini pupillage and I sat for 3 days on a rape case, intermarital rape. So the case was effectively that the husband had been raping his wife for 10 years. And the guy I was with said, we're going to go short this afternoon. Judge has got a dentist appointment or whatever. And he was going out for the afternoon and he traipsed me over to the other Crown Court in Manchester and said, help, you can sit on this. It's going to be a fantastic historic sex abuse case. Right, grand. Oh, that seems a bit deep. And when I walked into the room, the barrister that I was with was going through the disclosure with about, no exaggeration, 13 or 14 lawyers from the CPS who had just suddenly found, no, not suddenly found, they had all this disclosure and they needed to go through everything to make sure everything that could affect their case, negatively or positively, the unused stuff, had been given to the other side. And he sat in the corner and gave me a box of files and just said, have you done anything on disclosure? Yeah, a little bit. Right, they're your 6 lever arch folders, off you pop. And it was the most tedious afternoon, honestly, the most boring thing that I've ever had to do in, maybe not in my life, it might be a slight exaggeration, but it was very, very boring. But the barrister afterwards said to me, you've not complained once, you've not asked to go back to chambers, you've not asked even if you can bob out for a brew just to give yourself a bit of fresh air. And what are you doing next week? And I said, back at bar school. I think we were in 2 or 3 days a week, and he just said, this case will be starting if you want to come and see the opening. And that then became another 3 days worth with that chambers experience of what ended up being one of the longest historic sex abuse sentences in Manchester in the recent years. And I've stayed in touch with him. Sent him a really cheesy and cliche congratulations card at the end of it because he obviously smashed it and this guy had gone away for a very, very long time. But we've stayed in touch and he read applications, we did mock interviews and that kind of thing. So it's being able to kind of piggyback on the back of opportunities, and just put yourself out there. I think in terms of other experience, there's a lot of worry that there needs to be 15 mini pupillages, and if you want to do a PI, clin neg specialist pupillage or a criminal specialist pupillage, then you need to show your commitment to that area by doing 15 mini pupillages in that area, pro bono only in that area, competitions and marshalling in that area. I think for me, it's quite important to have a bit of variety. I know there's a question already in the chat about whether you need to do specific mini pupillages. I think it's important to show a variety, because how do you know you don't like family law if you've not done a mini in it? Equally, just picking family law on the bar course as your module isn't going to show that you're committed to doing a family law specialist practice, a family law specialist pupillage. So I think it's about getting the balance right and being able to have something that's on your CV or your application that reflects a well-rounded candidate. You've gone and got experience in different areas, and you've got experience to say, well, actually, I don't like family law. I don't like X, Y, Z about that area. However, I've had all these experiences in employment planning, civil, and I've decided, actually, I'd like to be a civil practitioner for these reasons. So as much experience as you can in the realms of possibility. It wasn't possible for me to take 3-4 days out and go and do mini pupillages in London. I could do things in Manchester, could do things in Leeds and Liverpool, but I couldn't go to London or to Birmingham or even to Cardiff. So that's just another story in itself. But try and get as much experience as you can within the realms of possibility. And when you're asked a question in interview, so if you decide you only want to practice in London but you live in the northwest of England, you've not got any experience in London that's on your application, but that's where you want to be, it's where you want to practice, you're going to be asked in interview why you've not got any mini pupillages in London. And if you can be honest and just say, wasn't financially viable for me, you're going to need a good reason for why you want to be in London and not anywhere else if you've got no experience down there. But don't be afraid to be honest, and don't hide where you've come from, I think is the best advice, really. Well, the best advice that I've got.
Thanks, Sophie. That's great. Sophie, did you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Someone else with another northern accent as well. I am starting pupillage next year at Park Lane, Plowden, Chambers in Leeds, which is a employment, clinical negligence and PI pupillage. And I did my undergraduate law degree at the University of Hull. Much like Jade's university, it wasn't one that was necessarily geared towards going towards the bar. Not that they didn't advocate, it was just not really something that was on their radar as such. And it happened through winning an award for a module that I got to go do some work experience at the CPS, and I met a barrister there and got a few contacts and did a few different mini pupillages through that, and that's how I came on to wanting to do a career at the bar. Instead of going straight into it the year after or anything of that nature, I knew I wanted to save some money, so I took a year out to do a completely random job in sales for an engineering firm, so something completely different to that. And then I essentially went on to do a master's at the University of Leeds. And again, this is where it probably doesn't follow suit for the pupillage that I've got, but I did it in criminal law, because at the time that's what I decided that I was most likely to want to go into. And I left my master's and went on to do a paralegal role at Hempson's, which is a NHS defendant trust, and I really loved the work there. And it kind of clicked that the advocacy of the barrister I'd seen that we'd gone to court with was more suited to the style of advocacy I liked. And that's when I decided, when I do my bar course eventually, that was, I probably wanted to do a civil clinical negligence sort of pupillage. So once I'd basically decided that, I thought I need to get a bit more experience, because everything I'd done up until that point, majority had centred around crime. So I went to do the BPP, but before that I did things like medico legal in Leeds, which is a series of talks between lawyers and doctors. Tried to gain pupillage, entered competitions that perhaps ADR ones of that nature, that's more civil orientated. And then I'm doing the bar course this year. In terms of advice, like Tom's mentioned, obviously a few people were successful with the scholarships, but I didn't get one, and I thought that was the end of the road. And I remember crying to my boss at the time, thinking that was me not going to get a pupillage. But it certainly isn't the make or break. It's just making sure that you've got other things on your CV. So this year, I know Tom is at my university as well, and we've both been representatives for our INS. Just trying to get different things on your CV. And before coming to the BPTC as well, I'd not done any mooting or any legal competitions. I'd done some like youth speaks competitions and debating ones, but nothing that was actually legally orientated. And whenever you're doing the bar course, if you're on it now, my advice would be to just do all the competitions you can, because they're literally there given to you. And you don't have to, go away and try and find them or make applications to them. You can just literally ask to be on those competitions. And my other advice would be, I know that Sophie mentioned about the self-belief point. When I was writing some of my applications this year, I tended to find that when I started off writing them, I would just write what I'd done, which I thought was in itself, thought, yeah, that sounds good. I've done that. That's a lot of experience, but I'd never actually said anything good about myself or what I'd demonstrated into that. So a good thing to do is to get your friend to sort of sit down and read it through, and perhaps get them to give their opinion on it, because obviously your friends are going to be a bit kinder in terms of what they think you've brought to it. But I tended to try and make myself say I've demonstrated, and then put three qualities with that, even if you don't use all three, because there's definitely not the word count for sometimes three qualities. It was just a case of trying to draw that, because my first applications I'd put down were merely just me writing things I'd done, which might be great, but if you can't tell somebody what you've done from them experiences, then obviously it's difficult for them to understand why they benefit from you with your qualities. And just finally, in terms of other things on your application, I found that my role at Element, which was the engineering job, it's in sales and it's not related to law, but it was being able to talk about in an interview, to draw on like commercial networking, things that are part of the qualities of being a barrister but aren't necessarily, it's not related field. So I drew upon networking seminars for that company, but it wasn't necessarily that would be exactly the same material, but you can draw experiences. So even if it's a part-time job at a cafe, you can still talk about how, that was client focused, or, things that you've done to show initiative. There's definitely attributes you can bring from them. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Thanks so much, Soph. And last but by no means least, Callum.
Hi everyone, my name's Callum. I, like Tom, in fact, we actually studied together, went to the University of Liverpool. I'm currently a first six pupil at Shavas Court Chambers, also in Liverpool. I was predominantly, fully state school educated up to the point I turned 18. It's funny, I wasn't going to mention it, but seeing as Sophie has, I'm going to bring it up. I had a very similar experience with a careers advisor. I frankly didn't do very well at my GCSEs, nor did I particularly care very much at that point, being blunt about it. And when I started my A-levels, it was pointed out to me that English and history were the two subjects that I was reasonably decent at and also enjoyed, and that may lead a hand to a career in law. I then spent some time just going to the magistrates' court, going to the Crown Court, getting a feel for it. And that's really where my desire to practice law came from. I then distinctly remember sitting down with my careers advisor at the time, about a month or two later. So I was in year 12, so I would have been 16, 17. And I told him what I wanted to do and was hoping to get some advice. And he looked at me and laughed. He literally laughed in my face, which some of you may think is horrendously unprofessional as it is, and told me quite bluntly that this was not the career for me, for my academics or who I was as a person. And that was obviously very tough to take, being impressionable at the age of 16, 17, to be told bluntly no like that was quite a hard thing to do. Thankfully, I'm rather stubborn, so I just made it my mission to give him the proverbial middle finger, as it were, in succeeding. Thankfully, I did all right in my A-levels. As I said, I went to the University of Liverpool, where Tom and I both graduated in 2018. I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship from Middle Temple, and then I went off and did the bar course at BPP in Leeds. And then I was fortunate enough to get a pupillage offer from Shavas back in May time, I think it was, and obviously started about a month and a half ago. So it's been quite a weird time. I started in lockdown. I've been to court 3 times, where considering I'm doing criminal and family is obviously quite strange, because I'd expect to be there every day. In terms of tips, I unfortunately have the unenviable task of going last. I quite frankly echo everything that has already been said. In fact, many of the things I would have said already have been, so I won't bore you any further by echoing those thoughts anymore. I think they've been really thoroughly explained by everyone. I do have some points I would like to make, and I'm going to take more of a turn and focus on pupillage applications and pupillage interviews in my advice to you. And that would firstly be being prepared and making sure that you've obtained evidence now, before you apply, before you write those applications, to show the commitment that you have to the profession, and to show which skills you've built upon, which skills you've improved, that you've dealt with any weaknesses that you think you may have, and to focus upon those. The more you can do now prior to applying, the more that's going to benefit you in your favour, both in terms of getting interviews and then also being able to impress panels within them. Secondly, and in line with that first point, would be to practice, I think, your art of persuasion. There's a very good book called The Devil's Advocate by a London Silk. I'm sure many of you have probably already had it pointed out to you. And it was the first time I ever heard this term of art of persuasion. And he does talk about that in the sense of courtroom advocacy, but I think it can easily be transferred into making sure that you're being as persuasive as possible, both written in your pupillage applications and orally interview. And I think that goes hand in hand with making sure that what you're doing to a panel, either when you're writing your applications or indeed telling them about it at an interview, is to remember to show them and not tell them. You don't want to just make a statement, I am good at public speaking. You want to show them the evidence of why you are good at public speaking. Show them the mooting that you may have done. Show them the negotiation competitions that you've taken part in, the written legal advice that you've done pro bono, any representation that you've made in tribunals, perhaps through or other organisations. Make sure that, as I've said, you're showing rather than telling. Barristers deal in evidence every day of the week. It's their bread and butter. So if you can get used to just giving them that, it makes their life a hell of a lot easier. You've got to ultimately be clear in what you are saying to a panel. How you're saying it as well, I think, is just as important, as well as obviously why ultimately you're telling them that point. So get used to being your own advocate. And again, I think this is something that both Sophies have talked about and really highlighted. And if we take their advice one step further into a pupillage interview or indeed a scholarship interview, you are the only person in there, and you're the only person who can justify why you deserve that money for a scholarship or why you deserve that pupillage offer to them. There's no point leaving things left unsaid that need to be said, because if you don't, then they're not mind readers and they're not going to know. And thirdly and finally, I think, again, echoing both Sophies, you've absolutely got to believe in yourself. You can't let anyone tell you that you can't do this, or you're not good enough for this, or your grades don't reflect this. It's quite frankly gritty determination and sheer hard work that I think ultimately has got me to where I am now. And I'm sure the other panelists would agree with that as well. I'd hope they would. It's that sets you apart, I think. So use that to your strengths and let it get you to where we are now.
That's great. Thanks so much, Callum. So that brings to the end the sort of introductions from our panelists and their tips. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to read the questions out. I know that some of you have answered the questions already. The first question is specifically for Ryan. So, were you part of a law society at your university? And if so, did you take part in any mooting competitions?
Yes, I was a member of a law society at Newcastle University. I'm just thinking back because I did my degree back in 2011, so it's quite a while ago and I had to try and remember. I was part of two societies, I think. I was part of there was a society specific for aspiring barristers, and I was also part of the North East Law Review. So I was part of both of them, yes. In terms of mooting, it was a part of the Aspiring Barrister Society, actually, that included mooting as their main kind of attraction as to why to join that society and to get involved. I think that mooting is something that a lot of chambers would expect everybody to have on their CV, or some form of public speaking without a shadow of a doubt, if not that. So I definitely recommend to get involved in as many competitions as you can, as much as your university affords. If your university is one that doesn't afford those opportunities, then you can look elsewhere. The Supreme Court do a competition for mooting. There's other external associations that allow for those competitions as well. The Criminal Bar Association, for example, can run a competition, various other organisations. So you can find them out there if you don't have that available. And you can always go to speak to your university tutors, who are probably able to point you in the right direction surrounding that. What I will say is, though, it's that it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not you perform well in your moots immediately, because it's new to everybody. So my first ever moot was an absolute calamity. I got the law wrong. I got the facts half wrong. And the judge was actually a third year law student, and he asked me during that moot whether I'd actually read the problem. So that's how bad it actually went for me. I didn't go any further with that one, but it didn't put me off because it was new to me as much as it was to everybody else. Nobody kind of looked at me in the room and made comments or judged me for how badly I actually did. And trust me, there's no way any of you could do any worse than what I did. So I'd recommend getting out there. The second moot I did then, I did improve. I got to the final of the next two mooting competitions I did. So perseverance definitely pays off, and it's about being able to put that experience on the form, that you're not afraid to get out there, you're not afraid to put forward what you think is the correct argument in a situation. So I think everybody would expect the mooting. If you can make the most of the societies that are available to you, that's great. I know not everybody will have the same opportunities as you go to different universities or some people may also do their degrees externally, so I know it can be a bit more difficult. But if you can get involved in what those societies offer, then I'd definitely recommend it, because it can create other opportunities, not just using your public speaking skills and developing them, but also the people you come into contact with. So as I progressed in some of the mooting competitions I did in my second and third year, the judges tended to be brought in externally, either barristers from chambers, local judges on circuits. So it also afforded you an opportunity to network either after the moot or before the moot. So again, you can kind of tap into a different stream from doing that. It's not just about developing your skills and simply putting it on a CV. See what you can gain from it and try and make the most of the opportunities that are there for you.
Thanks, Ryan. That's great. I've got a question for everyone, essentially. So I have a question. Oh, no, my apologies. They were just saying thank you. It's a question for Tom. Are there any specific qualities that 5 Pump Court look for in particular?
Okay, I don't want to go too far into what 5PC specifically look for, because obviously not everyone in this chat is going to be applying for them. And also, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure is the honest answer. They're not a set who publish a set criteria for exactly how they mark you. What I can kind of help you with is what I, from an experience in those interviews and other ones where, you know, in particular those where I got second rounds, and what I think I did there that helped me. I think the first thing that I definitely did in those more successful processes, there were the ones where I was more myself. I'll definitely say that. There are some panels, you'll all find this when you go down the route. There are some panels where you go in there and for whatever reason you just don't gel with them. It might be a personality thing, I don't know, but there are some panels who will have their own approach and that doesn't bring out the best in you. And that's not a cynical thing, it's just the way that different people are. But there are some panels who you go in for and they maybe have the same humor as you, they have the same kind of way of thought processing as you, and it's weird. It's like in the same way that you click with people when you meet them, you sometimes click with panels. And I do think that 5PC and some others definitely fell into that category. I think the other thing in particular that did me very well there was they asked me a lot of questions about personal injury. As I mentioned, my pupillage is common law based, which obviously includes civil, which in itself includes PI. They asked me a lot of questions about PI on my second round, and I do believe that because I'd worked in there for a year and I knew a lot about not just the law but about the procedure as well, I think that did come across very well. And you know what they want to see is someone who not only would be a good fit for Chambers, that kind of links to my first point, but also there'll be someone who will clearly adapt well to the work that we do. And again, that goes down to evidence. It's showing, but how have I developed myself to be someone who will be good at what you do? And I think that my answers that I gave were quite demonstrative of that. But obviously, this is me guessing. I don't know for sure because I've not as yet had that chat where I've sat down with members of the panel and said, okay, so why did you actually give me the job? Whether I will have that conversation ever, I don't know. Georgia May, I'm happy for you to send me a message or whatever if you want any questions about them specifically. I can answer them to the best of my ability. But I would say that's kind of a rough guess on my part as to what went well there.
Thanks, Tom. The next question is, did you address your A-level grades in your application and explain as to why they weren't as high as you had hoped? Jade, did you want to take that one? I know you mentioned your A-level grades, so I don't know if that one was aimed towards yourself.
Yeah, so I got 3 C's at my A-levels, which wasn't part of my plan in any sort of way. So obviously that did kind of hinder the kind of things that I could do. I did address it in my application forms and stuff because at the end of the day it was something, sorry. Sorry guys. I did address it in, oh, we just got louder. Sorry. I did address it in my application form, because at the end of the day, it was something that they would obviously ask me about. It was something that was vividly on my application form. It was something that I couldn't get away from. What I had to explain to them was that I did get 3 C's in my A-levels, but I'm ashamed of it in the terms of I didn't do as well as I'd hoped, but I'm not, because what he did was push me to excel in every other thing that I did. So when I was going into university, I wanted to at least get 2-1 or a first, and I did. I did my master's, and I was able to get a distinction. And I was able to get a distinction in every module that I was able to take. And I then went to bar course, and I was able to get very competent. So I was able to show that although that I did badly in one aspect of my life when I was younger, the older that I got, the more that I knew that I had to put so much effort into just showing what I was capable of, to know that every year that went by, I was able to learn from all the experiences that I had, and put that into showing you that I am capable of getting high grades. And because I didn't get the best A-levels in the world, it also pushed me to get as much experience as I could to make up for that. So I was able to just do things like volunteering, just kind of like shadowing people as well, and just showing you that, you know, intellectually it might have gone south at one point, but every other step of my career, I was able to just progress higher and higher and higher, and able to get to where I am now. So I'll definitely say, if you do have not the A-levels that you wanted, definitely do address them. I did apply for a mini pupils, like I said, at Ely Place Chambers, and he did ask me straight off the bat, you know, why do you have 3 C's at your A-levels? And he even said, what do you intend to do about that? And the advice he gave me was, you know, definitely put that down on your application forms and your CVs, and just explain to them why that happened, whether it was a blip, whether it was something personal, and what have you learned from that experience. So yeah, I'll definitely say always address it, and just be prepared for that to come up if that ever does come up. And sorry for my phone.
That's okay, no worries. The next question, I believe, has kind of 2 parts to it. So the first part is, what effect do you think that COVID-19 is going to have on the pupillage process?
Sorry, Paige. Sorry to interrupt you. I think there was a question that was accidentally skipped over just before. Said, if you know the area of law you want to go into, would you recommend only doing mini pupillage in that area, or a variety of areas, from Sophie?
Oh, my apologies, Ryan. I skipped over that because Sophie talked about it in her speech, so I didn't want to sort of
no problem.
go over it again.
Fine.
That was all.
Yeah, sure, no
but
problem.
If you wanted to say something, feel free.
No, that's fine. No problem at all. I just wanted to make you aware, just in case.
No problem. Thank you. Yes, so the first part, I think, is what effect do you think COVID-19 is going to have on the pupillage process? And also the second part to that is it sort of beneficial to have a previous career when you come into the bar, or is it a hindrance? Cal, did you want to attempt that one?
I can certainly give it a go. It might be better for Ryan to talk about the second part, perhaps, because I didn't have a previous career before, aside from a very short stint part-time in a state agency, which didn't go particularly well. But regarding COVID-19, I can definitely say it's certainly impacted upon my pupillage so far, as I've told you about. And I think certainly Tom, I know, who's been going through the pupillage search this year, has found it certainly affected him. Whether it does continue into the future or not, I suppose, depends on the government's regulations with social distancing and such like. But I think it will be good in the future to continue to prepare for both, perhaps the opportunity of face-to-face interviews, also perhaps still video link interviews as well, as I know Tom has mainly been doing this year since February time onwards.
Just so anyone here is not unsure, Callum and I are actually friends outside of this. Callum doesn't just perchance know everything about me and everything. Just to clarify, I'll leave you to it.
Cheers, mate. I appreciate that. Yeah, some people might have thought I was being weird there, maybe. I think it's one of those where if you just prepare for every eventuality, it will make it a hell of a lot easier for you. Yes, there are difficulties at the moment financially with Chambers. Yes, there's always going to be, because obviously court work is down. Yes, that is more naturally going to harm the more common law focused areas because they can't be getting into court so much. Having said that, there is a backlog of cases that is currently at this moment building up, especially in crime, family, PI. there was already a backlog in crime, and that's just got twice as bad over the last few months. So I think there will be some kind of bounce back. I certainly am nowhere near qualified enough to comment on what that bounce back will be, but I think it will be enough of one for there to be pupilages being offered in the future, and perhaps maybe a second stint or a second round of this application process, if you like, which will probably convene September, October, November time. So as I've said, with regard to sorting evidence out and such like, keep doing things like this, get involved in online mooting competitions and advocacy, because I think one of the common questions I certainly would be asking if I was on a pupillage panel come October, November, or even next application round next year in 21 would be, what have you been doing, or what did you do in lockdown to make yourself a better candidate? So just bear that in mind. Ryan, did you want to take hold of that second part?
Sure, no problem, Callum. I think the question was roughly, does a previous career assist you or help you stand out more than other candidates in the pupillage process? What I would say to that is it depends on what you make of your previous career and the skills that you've obtained in your previous career, really. So I don't think it gives you any extra advantage unless you make it give you that advantage. And what I mean by that is, when I was looking through what I'd done previously and I was applying for pupillage, I had a strong feeling I'd be asked why I changed industries, why I worked in the previous industry. So before I went to those interviews, I tried to create myself a small list that I could memorise of skills I'd obtained from recruitment that were directly relevant to practising as a barrister. So the first one that comes to mind, for example, would be that I would have to interview candidates for specific roles before I'd pass them over to a company to interview. Well, that's very much like the client interviewing that you have to do on the bar course, and it's very much what barristers will have to do day to day. So I could demonstrate that I'd gained that experience from that industry. Another one would be that I'd have to negotiate with stakeholders of businesses to try and agree terms and conditions of employment that they would offer and what the recruitment company's cut or percentage would be for supplying that service. So I could demonstrate that I had already had negotiation skills from my previous role. And again, they're directly relevant to the career that we're looking at. So I think it's about what you can make of your previous career and how you can try and drill down into the skills that you've obtained and apply them to the skills that would demonstrate you could be a good barrister. So I think that's probably the best way to go. So I wouldn't necessarily say it gives you more of an advantage. The only way it does give you more of an advantage is if you can turn those skills into relevant, punchy pieces of information for pupillage panels, essentially.
Could I just piggyback on the back of that? If you have had a previous career and it's not necessarily law related, I mean, I was in the army, I had nothing to do with law. I think if you think about how a clerk would advertise you, so as a pupil and as a very junior tenant, when work comes into chambers, it's not necessarily coming in with your name on it. You might have connections with solicitors, and that's fantastic if they then, oh, excuse me, that's a panicking mother wanting to know what I'm doing. She'll probably ring again in a minute, so I'll apologise for that. Where was I? Clerks. So when the work comes into chambers, unless you know a solicitor who is going to send work in to you on a regular, consistent basis, then you need to think about how a clerk could advertise your skills. So, I mean, it sounds obvious, but if something comes in and it's, say, a court-martial or it's to do with a soldier having a fight in a chip shop, then it's probably going to come to me for some strange reason, because the clerks will say, oh, well, Sophie's ex-military, what about her? And it's, if you have worked in teaching or in sales, a contract dispute, even theft, matters might come to you, just because the clerks will be able to kind of play off those skills that you have. So perhaps think of it from a client's perspective. What skills have you gained in your previous employment that a client looking for a barrister, or the clerks selling you, pimping you out effectively, can use to promote you as an individual and you as a member of chambers?
That's great. Thanks, guys. So the next question is, what is your best advice for tackling legal or ethical issues given in pupillage interviews? Sophie W, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure, no bother. I actually did a few of the legal ones in the interviews I had recently. And in terms of the legal ones, half of the time I don't think you're expected to know the exact law. They will give you the law, but it's always good to go in having an idea of that area so that you don't just see the statute and start to panic. So my advice in terms of the legal ones would be, if you're, for instance, applying for personal injury pupillage that's maybe specialist, try and get a broad range of the key areas of law in that, and some particular tests that tend to stick to more of the simpler ones, because they're likely to come up, because they're obviously not going to want to disadvantage people who perhaps aren't on the bar course yet. So just try to get a general area and just practice maybe doing some problem questions, but timing yourself, because there's sometimes the pressure of the time does make you feel quite stressed, and you, instead of sort of doing it logically and getting down to it, you will tend to think about the time a lot more in the interview. So getting used to that, the time. In terms of the ethical ones, if you're on the bar course, and it is a lot easier because you can read the code and things like that on the ethical code. But if you're not, I think it would be just trying to take a moment to think about the situation, and then just going it through it as logically as you can from your standpoint. Because I'd like to think that most of us who are going on to do the bar would have quite an ethical mindset anyway. So if you think that that's the right thing to do, then go with that in the interview. But if you did want to have a really delightful read of the code, then you could do that as well, which would give you that extra advantage, which you do get on the bar course. But yeah, so that would be my two things for that, really.
That's great, thank you. The next one is key tips for getting a scholarship from INS. I can't remember who's got a scholarship and who hasn't, so if you have a scholarship, feel free to jump in.
I'll have a go. I've been through 2 scholarship interviews from 2 different INS, so I've been around the bushes, so to speak. The one thing that I would say as my point 4, I defer to some of the others who I'm sure can talk about it much more articulately than I can, is be very mindful of which IN you go for. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, not all the INs interview everyone. So Lincoln's and Gray's do not interview all applicants. They have an initial paper sift, whereas Middle and Inner will interview everyone. So that's the first decision that you've got to make. It's, for me, I see it as a decision of not only which of the 4 INs generally do I like the most, do I think I'd fit in with the most, but if you are considering, say, Lincoln's or Gray's, you've got to ask yourself, okay, am I confident enough in your application to get past that paper sift? And if you're not, if you think you look better in the interview room than you do on paper, maybe you go for Middle or Inner instead. In terms of kind of solid advice as to succeeding at scholarship interviews, I think a lot of it is knowing your application inside out, because the majority of the questioning I had for both my interviews was application based, that and current affairs as well. So really make the informed choice to read around as much of current affairs, legal affairs as you can. There's some really great resources online. I know Inner Temple have a very good blog where they upload recent stories. The Times is great for law. Even just reading BBC News and looking at headlines and just getting your head around what something is in the news, and then forming an opinion on it, because they're not just going to want to know what the news is, but they also want you to have an opinion on it. And also on that, they will also almost certainly at one point ask you to argue the opposite of what your actual opinion is. So just be prepared to argue anything both ways. So I'd say they're probably my tips for scholarships.
Sophie, did you want to add anything to that?
I joined in a temple because all my friends were joining in a temple. So as much as people say, oh, read around, have a good idea of why you're joining which I absolutely advocate for, please do have a read around. But also, if you're not really sure, then it doesn't matter if you just go with what your friends are choosing. I obviously joined dinner. They do interview everybody, and I think they've always interviewed everybody. So I remember going down for a 15-minute interview, and I think Tom's right in terms of the questions that they ask, generally kind of current affairs, might not be legal. So I think somebody asked me something about the suffragettes, and I just looked at them as though kind of, is this because Emmeline Pankhurst is from Manchester, or like, has this got anything to do with anything to do with anything? I think there's the standard, why do you want to be a barrister? Why do you want to be a barrister, not a solicitor? They're very kind of general questions, probably the questions that you'd find on the Gateway. I think the 5 standard questions that are on the Gateway applications were the 5 questions that I had. But there was a kind of, you've got 60 seconds to persuade us to watch whatever film or read whatever book. And that was kind of the persuasive task that we had. And I know that they roll that through year on year, whether it's a film or a book, But what I would say, and from my experience, is that it's not necessarily the content of what you give them. It's more to do with how you present the advocacy effectively. It is an advocacy exercise. The whole interview is an advocacy exercise. And to put that into context, I decided that when they asked me for 60 seconds of why you should watch your favourite film, the only film that I could remember that I'd ever seen on TV was Gladiator. And I told them that it was a film about a farmer whose wife and child are killed for some reason that I couldn't remember, because this poor man is a farmer. But then he goes on to kill the king, and I'm pretty sure that's not what happens at all. I think I've seen that film twice. I know the soundtrack, but I've seen the film probably twice. It's definitely not a film about a farmer, but I came away with a scholarship. And I took away from that, and advice that I've given to other people that have asked kind of for advice in terms of in scholarships. It's not necessarily the content, it's more about how you present yourself and how you present your argument. So try and do 3 points. Why should we pick you, or why should we give you X amount of money? Try and think of your 3 points and go with 3 points. Don't do what I used to do, probably still definitely do, and just try and waffle your way through the answer to the question. Really try and focus on what those 3 points could be, even if you don't necessarily think them about yourself. I'm the most confident person. You should give me this scholarship because I am the most confident person when it comes to advocacy and thinking on my feet. You might not think that about yourself, but if you can say that and give examples, well, I've done this mooting competition and I've done this debating and I've been the representative for my course at university, then you're demonstrating that you probably are good at thinking on your feet and you probably are good at public speaking, even if you don't necessarily think that about yourself. So it's not necessarily content, but how you put yourself forward in that interview.
I just wanted to jump on one thing that Tom mentioned. I don't have a scholarship, so it's not just probably more general interview wise. But Tom mentioned about reading the different papers and to get a sense of awareness of things in the news. But I tend to do long walks into the university, so I listen to a lot of podcasts. So just as a heads up, a lot of chambers do podcasts. I listen to like One Crown Office Row, which is got personal injury, clinical negligence things on it, so that's more relevant to what I was doing. But I'm sure other chambers and solicitors, and I think there's even one on the BBC as well, so that if you're doing a lot of commuting, that's another easy way to get in the sort of current affairs without having to sit and sort of go through it on paper.
Thanks, Sophie. The next question is for Tom. Did you get any feedback from your unsuccessful scholarship interview?
Nope.
I didn't think so.
It's the shorthand answer to that. I'm just reading through the rest of that particular question. Where is it?
I think the next part is, what did you learn from that feedback that helped you be successful? But I guess you could apply it from what you learned from that first round of interviews.
I have noticed, and there's another question coming my way shortly, so I think it might be best. But what I would say there, I put to the side and answer with the second question. Otherwise, I feel I'll be repeating myself.
Yep, that's great. So some firms offer a paralegal role with the intent to offer a training contract. Is there any equivalent to becoming a barrister? Jade, did you want to take that one?
I don't know if there is an equivalent. I think the equivalent is most likely just things like mini pupilages. And some chambers do what's called an assessed mini pupilage. So I think you go there for, 3 days to 5 days, and they give you certain types of work with a barrister there. And they sometimes just assess the work that you've done, and sometimes that will go towards whether you get a pupillage interview or not. Other places also just like to see what kind of mini pupilages you've done in general and what kind of work experiences you've done. So I don't think there's an exact equivalent. I think it's just kind of, some do assess mini pupilages, and some just look at the mini pupilages you've done in general, and some just look at the kinds of work experiences you've done in general. There are some chambers that, for instance, when I was at BPP, they would advertise for, I think, like an in-house clerk, or they would advertise for like an admin role at a set of chambers, or like a PA for a top QC that was looking to recruit someone. And they always said, if you're looking for pupillage, this would be a good thing for you to do, that you could talk about in your interviews or put in your CV. So I think those kind of roles as well could also help. So I think for those of you that are looking for certain types of work, it could also be worth going on Chambers' website and seeing if they do have admin roles, if they're looking for a clerk, or anything like that, just so it's just a nice alternative route to do work experience that's not necessarily a paralegal role, if that's not what you can get.
That's great. I've just realised that the next question is actually for you as well, Jade. So what are your tips for getting into the CPS? How does it differ from applying to the self-employed bar?
For the CPS and the self-employed bar, from what I know, I think the self-employed bar is typically, I think, a first round interview that might have also like a written assessment with a face-to-face interview. And then if you're successful, then a second round interview that also might have a legal, written or oral part with another interview. I'm not actually too sure because I haven't done the self-employed interview. So when I applied for the CPS, it was actually my first application. So what they do is that they have 2 psychometric tests, a video interview, and if you pass that, it's the final stage, which you have a 30-minute written assessment, a 5-minute oral assessment, and then a face-to-face interview with the panel. In terms of tips, I would say probably send me a message, because there's so much that I normally give out to people that I can't all say. But what I would definitely say is know why you want to apply with the CPS and look into what they do. So the CPS is strictly criminal prosecution work. So I think it's just looking at, what they do, who they are, what they stand for. The code for Crown prosecutors is also something that I would also suggest reading if it is something that you want to get into as well, which you can just find on their website. I would also say tips in terms of video interview and face-to-face interview is have examples ready. They really do like to know that you can do the job at the end of the day, and it's really competency based. So a lot of the time it was them asking me, you know, when have you used this type of communication, and what skills have you done, what kind of things can you do, and what examples can you use to back that up. So it was just a lot of, you know, this is what I've done. I've worked in recruitment. I did this on my law degree. I was able to do this when I was mooting. So I was able to show them the types of skills that I've had. And I would also say, don't be afraid to use real life examples. There were things that happened in my life that I didn't think panelists would like to hear that they apparently liked. So for instance, I live in South East London, and I said on my interview, you know, at the end of the day, there's people selling drugs outside my door. I've had friends be stabbed. I've had friends who do unfortunately stab. My next door neighbour was a victim of domestic violence. I had to hear that, you know, half the way through my course. And those real life experiences helped me to just know that I do want to be a barrister. I want to advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves, and I want to bring justice for those who deserve it. And I was able to use all of those real life examples in my interview to just say that this is where I've come from, this is what I've experienced, as well as the other work experiences that I've had. And I think those kind of things also really, really do help. So I hope that helps those that ask for the CPS tips.
Thanks, Jade. That's great. The next question is for Tom. So essentially the question is, what changed between your first lot of applications and your second lot of applications to turn it into pupillage?
Yeah. So between the first and second, truth be told, not a huge amount changed on my application. Most of the stuff that I had first time round was the same second time round. The main changes that came second time round was, firstly, I was on the bar course second time round, whereas first time round I wasn't. Second time round I had the scholarship, but first time round I didn't as yet. And thirdly, I had been my rep. Sophie mentioned how her and I have been the reps for our inns, and I've been doing that over my BBTC year, which I didn't have before. In truth, I don't think much application-wise changed, and I don't think that's really the big thing, but changed between that year and the year after for me. I got similar ratios of interviews first and second time round. In terms of what changed between me going into interviews first time and not getting second rounds and or pupillage, and me getting second rounds and or pupillage second time round, I think the main thing that changed for me was confidence. What was very big for me was getting the scholarship. I don't want to make this sound like you need a scholarship to get pupillage. You really don't. You really, really don't. But the impact that getting it had on me and my self-esteem and my perception of myself as a lawyer, it was significant, especially because I had been rejected first time round. I think I went into a lot of my first year interviews with that weight on my shoulders and having a lot of doubt about myself and where I fit into this profession. And I think second time round I'd had a boost, and I made a very conscious job of riding it. And I think that did help me a lot, because as has been mentioned, the way that you present yourself to a panel can very effectively mitigate where your answers might not be perfect. If you answer them with a certain amount of pizzazz, it doesn't really matter, because that's the power of persuasion that Callum talked about earlier. I think the other thing that did change between first and second time for me was I was a bit more brushed up on my law. When I went in first time, I had been working for a year and I was just doing PI, and I knew a bit about that, but other areas of law I kind of let go by the wayside. And I did have quite a few legal questions first time round, which I wasn't necessarily as prepared to answer at second time. When you're on the bar courses, and sure, people who are on it now will be aware, and this is also a bit of advice for people who are starting the bar course, you do go back to your basics in terms of having to apply the tortious principles, your basic contract principles, crime, etc. That all comes back to haunt you when you think it's gone after first year uni. So if you have that brushed up in your head, that's going to help you deal with any legal based problems that you have. So with my 5PC first round, I had a lot of stuff on contract, which had I had that question the year before, I would have been in a mess for, but second time round, I was better for it. So I think, just to give the headlines for your question, confidence and really sure on my law.
Thanks, Tom. Jade, the next 3 questions are actually for you. So the first question is, what inn of court are you with?
I'm with Gray's Inn, which I like to say is the best inn ever. Absolutely loved my inn. I applied and I went to Gray's Inn, actually because the mentor that I was with, he was at 3 Raymond Buildings, which was kind of like right next to Gray's Inn, and that was the only reason I applied. But it just worked out. And in terms of support, I was just really thankful that they were able to offer things like mooting. So like I said, I didn't get to do that at my university because they didn't offer it, so it wasn't a thing. So they were able to offer things like speed moots, and that really just helped in terms of my confidence. So it's where you got the brief, I think an hour before the moot time, and you read all of the papers that they give you, and then you make your submissions in front of a judge. I think stuff like that really, really helped, because as much as I do want to be a barrister, I hate last minute preparation. I really don't like receiving things so last minute like that. And I think that just really, really helped. So I did a few of those kind of moots. All of the other inns do things like that, to be honest, and all other inns have things like mooting competitions, like the others have said that you can join. They also got me to do marshalling, like I said, with the Crown Court judge for a few days. They offer you CV support. They do things like mixed messes, which is where you basically just have a really nice dinner with a bunch of great barristers and QCs and judges, and you just get to mingle and just talk to as many people as you can. I think you can join the inn even without being a BPTC student, if I'm correct. I do think you can join it being a university student. I think there's a membership fee of £100, and you fill an application form and you send it, and you get your number and your card. So you can start going to events with other students, other judges and other barristers at these stages in your careers, and you can just mingle with as many people as you can. So I would say joining an inn is also a good way to just network. So you can do that whether you're on the bar course or not, and that's really, really helpful.
Great. The second question is, do you have any tips on preparing or passing for the CPS civil service test? So I think this is the first round test.
Jade, sorry, but before you start that, I wonder if it might be good to make the point, very good advice on joining in, but obviously for any of those students who haven't read up on it yet, if you join an in, that is the one that you make your scholarship application to. There is no way to go back after you have joined. You might be thinking, well, how's Tom managed to go differently? He didn't actually end up joining Middle Temple, and then he went for Lincoln's. So that's the way he did his. But if you do indeed join before you start the bar course, if you then apply for a scholarship, you will have to apply with that particular inn. Sorry to interrupt, Jade. I just thought I'd make a point.
Thank you. Sorry, what the question was, the civil service test?
Yes.
It's the first round, yeah. So I think there was one situational judgment test, which is kind of like those scenarios where it's like, if this person comes to you and says this, then, you know, what do you do? What's the most effective? What's the least effective? And they give you a bunch of those scenarios. And I think the other test is a verbal reasoning test, which is where they give you a piece of text that's nothing to do with the law. It literally could be about the farm, it could be about something in the 17th century, it could be about space, and you have to just read it and see whether the statement that they give you is true, false, or whether you can't say. And I think that's the one that really throws people off the most, because it's just things that you're not really expecting to read or see, and sometimes it's really kind of hard to think about, oh, is this true, false, or why can't you say? And those are the only options that you can choose. In terms of tips, I would say what helped me is that I did the practice rounds. So I just kept repeating them again and again until I got to a score where I was like, okay, this is good enough to obviously pass the test. So I just kept use of the practice rounds. I would also say just make sure you're in a really quiet environment. I think the space that you're in can sometimes just have an effect on you mentally as well. So I would just definitely say be in a quiet room, just be prepared to take the test. And just go through the practice rounds a few times, and hopefully that helped me. So that's a good tip to give.
And finally, do you have any advice on how to get through the video interview stage of the CPS?
Yeah, the video interview is quite strange, I'm not even gonna lie, because you're basically doing this, you're recording yourself, so there's no one on the other side. And what it was for me was that there was 3 questions that popped up on the screen. You had 5 minutes to prepare your answer, and then I think you had like 1.5 minutes to deliver your answer. And it was obviously quite scary because you don't know what could obviously come at you, and obviously if you record it, you couldn't re-record it. So if you did mess up, you couldn't kind of be like, oh sorry, without it kind of just like going through like that, and you had to stick to a really strict time limit. The kind of questions that I got asked were things about, again, communication. So what is effective communication to you, and when have you used it? I think there was another question on why do you want to become a barrister, which is a standard question. And I think there was a question about why do you want to be a Crown prosecutor, especially because that's the field that you're going into. So I would say tips are, number 1, probably just think about things about communication. So when have you used communication? So I use things about volunteering at legal advice centres. I was able to do face-to-face communication because I was interviewing people by myself. I would give advice over the phone if a client called up, or I was drafting a letter or writing an advice email. So I was able to demonstrate those kinds of communications. Why do you want to be a barrister is obviously the things that, you know, are personal to you, you know, thinking on your feet, structuring arguments, advocating and stuff like that. And why do you want to be a Crown prosecutor, again, was where I just drew on personal experiences, you know, just saying this is where I come from, this is what I've personally seen, and this is what's driven me to want to go into that sort of field. So I would definitely say make sure you have examples ready to kind of just have on the go and shape your arguments around that, because you never know what kind of questions they could obviously ask you at the end of the day. But I would just definitely say be ready to have examples, look over your CV, look at the things that you've done, look at the skills that you have, and just be ready for them to ask you any kind of question about that requires an example from the things that you've done.
That's great, thank you. I am conscious that I said that this session would finish at 7:30. Are the panelists okay to stick around for about 15 minutes to answer any other questions?
Yeah,
that's
fine.
great.
Yeah, sure.
Fab. The next question is for panelists who did an LLM before taking the bar. How valuable do you think it was to have done the masters in terms of securing pupillage? I can't remember who has done one, so if somebody wants to jump in.
I've done a masters before the bar course, so for me it was quite valuable because I did my degree and then I did a different area completely that I was employed in. So I probably spent nearly 3 years away from any kind of law, really. So for me, it was valuable to get my hand back in, if that makes sense. In terms of applications, I was asked about it. I was asked about my grades for it, and a few barristers I asked from various chambers at different events did say that on occasions they would give more points to candidates who'd applied with masters. Other chambers said it didn't matter at all to them. And they focus more on your first degree. I think where it can help and where it helped me was that when I did my undergraduate degree, there was some areas of law that I wasn't able to explore because the university didn't have them available. So a lot of commercial subjects were beyond my reach when I did my undergraduate degree. So in my master's degree, I made a conservative effort to structure that degree to give me experience in more commercial areas, to see if I enjoyed them, to see if that's something that I might want to pursue further. So it benefited me in that respect. The only other way that I think it can benefit you, and this is from my experience working as a paralegal in a law firm at Shoesmiths, is that there was a couple of occasions where there were solicitors in the firm who had to instruct barristers for certain types of hearings. And I had a couple of solicitors say to me that sometimes they would be between 2 different barristers and they weren't sure who to instruct. One of them had a master's, so that was kind of the thing that made that solicitor go for that barrister instead on that occasion. I'm not saying that's always the way it works, but for them in that particular matter on that particular occasion, it did make the difference for who got the instruction. So I wouldn't say it's the be all and end all. I certainly wouldn't say that it means that you have less chance if you don't have one. I think it's a good thing to have if you have the opportunity, but don't be disheartened if you don't. There's plenty of people who obtain pupilages without master's degrees. There's plenty of people who obtain pupillage with master's degrees. It's all about what your interest is, the reasons behind why you want to pursue doing a master's, and what you hope to obtain from doing that course.
I
That's
just
great.
wanted to quickly follow that, if that's all right, just as a thing for doing masters. You just be sure before you do it that you're not doing it just to add it as another thing for your CV. Obviously, what Ryan said, the things he wanted to gain from it, it's a year of like doing quite a lot of essays. I think in total I wrote about 60,000 words, and I worked full time throughout Oman, and it was quite a stressful period. So if you didn't love the content you were writing, it would become quite laborious. So I would say that make sure you're doing it not just to add it as an extra for your CV, but perhaps as things you want to gain from that particular topic, or it's definitely an area you're interested in, because otherwise it's going to be a very long year.
Definitely. Jade, the next question is for you. How do you navigate being BAME and being a pupil barrister? Have you found it relatively easy or difficult to fit in what arguably is a traditionally white middle-class vacation?
I feel like being a BAME barrister means a lot to me, just because I personally feel like I just don't see enough of me when I walk into a courtroom, to be perfectly honest. I obviously worked as a paralegal last year, and one of the things that I used to realise was that every time I stepped into the courtroom, I was the only black person there, or half the time I was the only ethnic person there. And that obviously really got to me a lot. And, you know, whenever I went into a courtroom and I would see a black person, I'm like, oh my God, there's another person who's coloured that's there. And I kind of feel like I shouldn't have to think like that, which is unfortunate. I do think like diversity at the bar has obviously come a hell of a long way, but I do obviously think it definitely can go a lot further. I found it both easy and difficult in terms of I have literally stepped into court and had solicitors think I'm the defendant for some strange reason, just because I was the only black person there. And I've also walked into a courtroom and had people look at me and be like, you know, it's really good that you're here. And it's comments like that that just obviously make me feel I don't even know why it has to be said, or I don't know why they have to think like that and stuff like that. I think it's just really important to obviously know that if you do come from like a different background, just don't let it hinder you at all. I do obviously feel like sometimes it would be difficult to fit in. So for instance, when I was at my inn and I would take my parents to Sunday lunch at the Inns of Court just because it was something good for them to see, I was still the only black person there. And, you know, whenever I have to go to an event, sometimes I obviously do feel like, you know, am I going to talk the same? Do I have the same experiences? You know, do I look the same and stuff like that? I think it is something that is quite daunting, but I feel like you just have to go in there and own it, really and truly. Just don't be afraid of the background that you've come from, and just use it to your advantage. Like I always say that, you know, I come from where I come from. My parents aren't, you know, from this country. They came from Nigeria, and I'm just really, really glad that I'm able to have come from where I have come from and get to the stages that I am. You know, I am the first lawyer in my family. I'm the first person who's been able to go all the way to like law school. And it was my mum's dream for me to become a barrister. And she cried when she saw me get called to the bar and all of that stuff. And I think it's just so important that if you are BAME, it might be a bit difficult, but don't let it hinder you in any sort of way. And like I said, again, if you ever do need inspiration, obviously message me and anyone else, you know, on the panel. And also look out for events that obviously do geared towards BAME students, like Haking Council. Talk to a lot of QCs who are from a BAME background, talk to barristers who are from a BAME background, and obviously get their experiences as well and see how they navigated it as well.
Thanks so much for that, Jade. The next question is for Ryan. How do you go about asking barristers whether they have any shadowing opportunities for you?
By being very cheeky. No, I suppose a lot of it happens quite naturally. There isn't any kind of mechanical method that I've or approach that I follow to obtain experience. I think a lot of the time it's having conversations at networking events, getting to understand what that barrister is doing at that time, what type of work they're doing, showing a genuine interest for that type of work and explaining why you have that interest, and then perhaps saying, well, would I be able to come and see you do that? Because on the bar course, I've been making arguments about that and I want to see it done in practice. Would that be possible? So there is an element of being cheeky for sure and asking directly if you can do that. but it's more demonstrating that you have an interest in that area and the reasons behind why you want to see what they're doing, for me. But what I would say as well is that it's not just barristers that you can ask for that type of experience. I remember being in a coffee shop across the road from the University of Law when I was doing the bar course, and I was chatting to the barista, and we were just talking about everyday life, and he asked me what I was doing, and I explained I was on the bar course. I had an interest in crime, especially financial crime and fraud. And he said, well, that's really interesting. My best friend is a partner in a law firm, and he actually heads up the regulatory team in that law firm. I'll tell you what, give me your email and I'll send it to him. And I said, well, that's great, thank you very much. Sent it across. I gained 2 weeks worth of work experience from that partner in that law firm on a case in Warwick. So it's not necessarily just barristers, it's anybody who has a connection to the profession. And experience in law firms can also be just as valuable as experiences on mini pupilages, because you get to see it from the other side. You get to gain experience of what it is solicitors look for in barristers who they want to instruct, which is really useful. So I wouldn't say there's any formula I followed or any kind of mechanical process I followed. It was more to do with how the conversation was going, judging what type of things they were working on and whether they had an interest for me, or whether I could explain how I was interested in that area and how I'd like to see more of that type of work. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But the worst case that will happen is that a barrister will turn around to you and say, no, you can't do that. Follow the mini pupillage process on the website. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Can you tell me a bit about the application process for pupillage? And you can talk about something different. So the worst thing that can happen is they say no. So you have nothing to lose by asking. And the chances are, if it goes horribly wrong, they probably won't remember you by the time you apply for pupillage at that chambers anyway, and think, well, that's the person that asked that question before. So don't worry, be confident and ask the question. I mean, I don't know if the panel necessarily agrees with what I'm saying right now, but it worked for me. So hope that helps.
Thanks, Ryan. The next question is, I have to work alongside my studies and I find that most legal jobs are full-time. When looking for part-time work, are there any particular areas which could complement my legal CV? Has anybody done a part-time legal job? I know, Sophie, you worked as a paralegal. Was that full-time?
I still do it now part-time, but whilst I'm doing the BPTC. So if you're going to take a gap year or anything, it's a good way of getting to stay in a firm. But there are some roles, like legal admin roles, they're not necessarily the most thrilling jobs. You're perhaps creating bundles and stuff, but obviously you are still in a firm where you can still see what's going on and be like looking at the type of documents and things like that. So there are still roles in law firms that aren't necessarily paralegal in that they might have part-time roles for. But even just any jobs that you sort of part-time roles, like I worked in a shoe shop before, and as long as you can draw some relevant experience from it, I wouldn't say that there's any real wrong answer to that. It's just, demonstrating that you've got the ability to be able to work alongside it, and you're dedicated, you've got hard work from that. But also just you can draw experiences from a plethora of different jobs. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily a strict answer to that. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
I'd agree with that, to be honest, Sophie. As I said, I worked part-time for 4 or 5 years whilst I did my A-levels on the weekend, and then in university holidays and stuff as an estate agent. And that definitely helped me in pupillage interviews. In fact, a few interviews pretty much focused on that almost exclusively and excluded any sort of relevant legal work experience I'd had. Ryan, you're nodding along. I can imagine you've probably had a similar experience. It's quite interesting how, because chambers see loads of legal work experience on everyone's CV, that they take an interest in a candidate that has got something that's a little bit different and random on their CV, and therefore are genuinely interested in asking you about that.
Great, thank you. The next question is, do you think that video interviews helped or hindered you this year? Tom, did you want to take that one?
I can do, yeah. I'm in the very bizarre position where I've got pupillage at chambers where I've never actually visited. which is strange. In terms of whether they hindered me or not, I don't think so, to be honest with you. I've spoken to quite a few people who have been down the process this year, specifically since the current restrictions have been imposed. And, it's a mixed bag. I have spoken to people who have found it difficult. For me, in my experience, I've actually not minded it. It's just really, in my opinion, a case of trying to imagine, but you're speaking to someone as if it's just in real life and not really thinking, oh, it's over a screen. And it's little things like when you're speaking into a camera, making eye contact with the person on the Zoom call, trying to really make it as authentic as possible. I have had a few technical bloopers in my time. My first round with 5PC did not start for about 2 or 3 minutes after it was meant to start because I didn't work out how to deactivate my mute. So I was there frantically flailing and seemingly mouthing complete nonsense to them whilst they sent me increasingly exasperated messages on the chat saying, turn your mute off. And yes, this was the set who ended up giving me pupillage. So what I'll say is, the other side I appreciate, but it is in a very unorthodox fashion, and there are going to be a few cock-ups, but inevitably happen. But as long as you go in with the attitude of, oh, this is no different to speaking to a normal person, it's fine. And also, added benefit, you can wear whatever you want on your bottom half. I wore jeans for one of my interviews, and it was great. Just make sure you don't stand up. That's my only advice.
That's great. Thanks, Tom. The next question is, what do you think about the combination course of doing both an LLM and the bar course? Is it worth it? And does the location of the BPTC matter? Sophie, Kenny, did you want to take that one?
I think in terms of the combination course, I just did a GDL and then the bar course. So I'm probably not best placed to comment on whether it's necessary to do an LLM. I think in terms of where to do the bar course, I did it in Manchester because that was financially the best option for me. It meant that I could stay at home. It just so happens that BPP Manchester have some of the best grades. Little plug for BPP Manchester there. But to be perfectly honest, I don't think it really matters. The vast majority of the teaching is very much the same. I don't think it's something that chambers are really that fussed about. I mean, other people, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't, I was never asked in interview, why did you pick BPP Manchester and not the University of Law in Leeds or Northumbria? I think it's Northumbria that do the cross-qualification LLM bar course. I think my understanding of that is that you can do, it's effectively a 4-year law course. So if the costs or the fees of the bar course are incorporated and you can get student finance to do that, go for that. If that's the best option for you, then go for that. I couldn't have popped up to Newcastle and stayed up there because I'd done a completely different degree in Loughborough, and it wasn't an option for me to then do a law degree and then the bar course incorporated into that. But if that's the best option for you, go for that. I don't think you'd be criticised by any chambers for that, and I don't think you'd be criticised at any chambers for picking an institution based on what is financially the best option for you in terms of the bar course either. And if it is, then do you really want to be at that set?
Just to add to those comments, I completely agree with Sophie. If you're looking to do the LLM and the bar course, I know that there used to be, I don't know if it still applies, but there was funding, like student finance available for those students that chose that option. So if you didn't get a scholarship and you were really hoping you did to be able to afford to do the bar course, perhaps that's another way of obtaining the funds to pay for the course, because of course it is very expensive. So that is an option. What I would say about location, I agree with Sophie that I was never asked, why did you do the bar course in Birmingham? But it was quite poignant for some of my peers because they didn't have another connection to Birmingham as a province. So when they were applying for interviews at St Ives Chambers in Birmingham or St Philip's in Birmingham or Number 5 in Birmingham, they had to demonstrate that they had some sort of connection to the local area to show that they weren't going to do pupillage at a Chambers and then potentially leave to go back home to a Chambers that was close to them once they'd got to try and get tenancy somewhere else. So I think that it can be an advantage if you know you want to practice in London, and you definitely know that because all of the Chambers that you want to apply to are there. Perhaps it can benefit you if you're not actually from there doing the bar course there, because you can then say, well, I have a connection to the local area because I've done the bar course here, I've lived here for a year, and in that year I've made connections with X, Y and Z, and that's why I want to stay in London. So there's maybe that to consider, but apart from that, it certainly doesn't matter, and Sophie's completely right. It doesn't really matter in terms of teaching standard, I don't think. It doesn't really matter for the Chambers for you to go to a particular one for any specific other reason, but it might help you get a connection to a local area where the Chambers that you want to apply for are. So that might be worth bearing in mind.
I would also jump on the back of that, just because my experience is all Manchester and North West England based, and I'm doing a pupillage in Cardiff. What Ryan said about if you have the opportunity to go to London, if you're not from London and you want to practice in London, then that's great. If that's an option for you, go for it full force. I get off a lot of the barristers in South Wales. Oh, did you study law at Cardiff? No. Oh, did you do the bar course at Cardiff? No. What's your connection to Cardiff? I've never been here before. Literally the first time I set foot in Cardiff was to interview for pupillage. And yes, absolutely, that was brought up. And yes, I had an answer to it interview, but please don't be put off applying for pupillages in areas that you don't necessarily have connections to if you'd like to be there. So absolutely, if it's an option for you, go for it. But don't not apply to a Chambers that you think would suit you and your skill set and the areas you want to practice, just because you don't necessarily have a connection to that place. But do have a good answer as to why you want to do pupillage there. Otherwise, you will 100% be asked if you jump in ship when you finish your 12 months.
That's great, thank you. The last question I can see in the chat is, can international students apply for scholarships from INS? I don't know if anybody knows that. I think the answer is yes, but...
Only if they intend to practice at the Bar of England and Wales.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Yeah. They can get them if their intention is that, and I know of international students who have got scholarships, but their intention is to practice here come the end of the bar course and thereafter. So if you want to do the bar course here and then practice in your own country, then probably not. But if your intention to practice here, it's fine.
Tom, did Sabrina get one?
I believe so.
Didn't she? Yeah, we Tom and I had a friend at university who she was a Malaysian direct entry student. And she was successful at, Tom, was it Gray's?
She's got Denning. She's like me. She's got Denning.
Is it Lincoln's? Okay, yeah. So there's a direct example of it.
Yeah.
I had quite a few friends on the GDL and the bar course, I think GDL predominantly, that were effectively foreign and international students. And I think the predominantly applied to Gray's or Lincoln's Inn. I don't know whether that's kind of a running pattern, but I know a very good friend of mine who got quite a significant scholarship. Like Tom and Callum have said, she wanted to practice here, but I think she applied to Lincoln's on the basis that they have a lot of foreign barristers.
Yeah, I can say
foreign to cover. I know there are a lot of Malaysian students that were on my bar course, but she's not Malaysian, but she applied to Lincoln's Inn because of the prominence of non-British.
I believe spoken to
Commissioner
people
there.
at the end, they actually say, I think it's more than 50% of members are actually international students.
Yeah, yeah.
They really pride themselves on it, especially those from kind of South Asia, like Pakistan and Bangladesh. A lot of it goes down to Muhammad al-Jinnah, who was the man who basically founded modern day Pakistan. There's a real kind of heritage and kind of cultural shift with Lincolns for them. So yeah, being an international student is not a bar at all.
Maybe apply to Lincoln's Inn and that will be a bonus.
Well, I mean, Lincoln's Inn have the best food, but
that's great. That does bring an end to the questions. I think I speak on behalf of everybody that this has been a great session and we've all learnt a great deal, even me as well. So thanks so much to all of you for agreeing to do this. I know that many of you are sort of open and active on LinkedIn, and I'm sure that you will accept any questions that people might have after this. But other than that, thank you for the people that attended as well. I know we lost a few because there was the speed muting thing going on at 7:15, but we still have quite a few in here, and there was over 65 at the beginning. So I hope that we've sort of managed to help quite a few people when on their journey into the bar. That's all from me, but thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Paige.
Yeah, thanks, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Thanks, Paige.